Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Today, my guest is Beth Miller, and Beth is the CEO at executive-velocity.com for those who are not watching us on Facebook or YouTube. And she has a new book she has just written, which is called Replaceable, An Obsession with Succession. And we're going to start off the conversation talking about the difference between business exit planning and business succession planning. So let's bring Beth on. We'll start the conversation. Hey, Beth, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So there is the question. What's the difference between these two?
So there are a couple of differences. One is succession planning should be part of your strategic plan and business planning. So it's an ongoing process. It's something that you should be doing in order to build a leadership pipeline. So it's really about talent and people. Whereas exit planning is something that you start doing to prepare yourself, business owner, to exit. And succession planning could be a subset of exit planning, but exit planning is broader. It takes into account, the financials, the process. It's also around intellectual property. It's kind of buttoning up your business and getting it packaged in order to exit.
Okay, so in my experience, blue-collar business owners, specifically subcontractors, they don't do either.
Yeah, that's true.
So if I want to say, okay, I am interested, and on top of that, blue-collar businesses really, the exit planning they have to do, at least in the subcontracting world, who are many of our listeners, if in that world, there is no third-party sale because they don't have saleable businesses. There's no recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So it's always succession planning. And talk about how a drywall subcontractor, we'll get very specific here.
Okay.
Could go about the succession process with a company that has 15 or 20 people.
Yeah.
When should they start it, and what should they be doing?
So they should be starting really early, and it really starts with your hiring process. And when you are bringing people on board, understanding what potential looks like in your organization. What are those key criteria and business skills and competencies that are required to lead that organization of 15 or 20 people. So it starts with looking at you, the business owner, and defining, what has made your organization successful? What have you brought to the table? And then what maybe needs to change? So you've got to be really self-aware and be able to self-assess yourself as to what are those things that maybe somebody coming behind you should have that maybe you don't have. And that's really about changes in the marketplace, externally, what's happening that you might not have been prepared for. It could be like, for instance, if you look at, and I don't know anything about drywalling. Okay, I will admit I would hire a drywaller, but is there some sort of technology that has helped drive your business that maybe you weren't prepared for, that somebody behind you could be prepared for? So it's looking externally and not internally.
So here's the problem that I see with that is those are pretty sophisticated management things you're talking about. And if there's one true thing in the blue-collar business world, across all blue-collar businesses, especially with businesses less than 25 employees, nobody there is sophisticated. They get up in the morning, they get in their pickup truck, they drive out to a job site, and they will either get a crew started or they'll pick up a hammer and start banging nails themselves.
Right. Yeah.
So with somebody like that, I mean, they can build a nice business where essentially the business is always them. Without them, there is no business. And they probably have a bunch of helpers that are around them, but none of the helpers are going to be sophisticated business either. They're going to be tradespeople.
Yeah, that's true. At that size. Now, for instance, I'm working with a company up in Chicago. It's not drywalling, but it's a blue collar environment. They're a little larger. They're probably 50 to 60 employees. So there's a management level there, a supervisory level there that business owner has to evaluate and determine, okay, is there somebody that has the potential in the next 3 to 5 years when I want to exit to be developed for that position. Otherwise, and so doing that analysis early on will help you determine whether or not you've got anybody internally. And in this case, this guy really doesn't. So he's got to go out externally and find somebody, which is driving his exit date farther out because he didn't start the process earlier.
Well, here's what's going to happen with him if you're successful. He's going to hire somebody. He's going to find somebody who he can bring in. He's going to go through a 2 or 3 year process where he's going to learn how to delegate because he obviously is not great at delegating if he doesn't have somebody already in a session. What he has is a bunch of helpers right now, likely. And he's going to end up changing his relationship to the business.
Right. He has to. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have to, but he likely will if if you work with him.
Well, if he doesn't, then he's going to get in the way of that successor that he's identified.
Well, he's not likely going to find a successor. He's likely going to close his place down because if you don't have somebody who's able to be your successor, the challenge that they're going to have, at least in my experience, is that there's nobody there. At the end of the day, they're going to panic and say, you're going to be the person. And that person's not ready to step in. Right. And the whole thing implodes and they just close the business down.
That for those small companies, that's a lot of what happens. You're right. Because there is no sophistication in the business. There's no, for instance, the guy in Chicago, he does have people that he's delegated to. The problem is he hasn't delegated enough. And so there are gaps there that he's kind of enabled people.
Yes. The thing that we have often found is that if we're successful, and that's always a big if with these folks, to get them to become really good at delegating and get out of the day-to-day operations of the business, is that they may start saying, I want to do this because I want to sell my business. What I find is that after we do it, they don't want to sell their business.
Because they haven't prepared themselves for what's on the other side. Their business is kind of who they are. And one of the things I talk about in my book is that the business owner can be the biggest roadblock to succession planning. If he or she isn't prepared and understands what life looks like on the other side, they're gonna continue to go back into the business and mess things up for the person has been designated to take it forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I think what I find is that they're no longer stuck doing the stuff they don't like doing. And as a result, their business becomes much more successful. They start making more money. They have more time to do other stuff besides run their business. And at 60, 62, 65 years old, if they're in good health, they're saying, why am I going to sell?
Actually, my experience is the opposite. That if they understand, if they've got a plan, and they're clear that there's something better on the other side, then they're a lot more willing to give it up. And in fact, in my book, I start with a tale of two companies. And these are real stories of one individual who really understood the importance of succession planning and started early, and he understood what he wanted on the other side. The other guy was couldn't get out of it. He loved what he was doing. He didn't have a plan for what life looked like afterwards. And he loved working with the clients. Well, unfortunately, he ends up dying of a heart attack. And the business does implode because he had all the relationships with the clients. And the people around him, weren't prepared to take it forward. So in 18 months, the place shuttered.
So when you say they found a better thing on the other side, what might some of those better things be?
Family, grandkids, volunteer work, hobby, something that they've wanted to do, but haven't had the time to do. And all of a sudden now, as they were transitioning, for instance, this individual, he started, working 60 hours a week. And over 3 years, he had worked it down to 1 day a week where he was actually coming into the office. And so he was gradually moving away and filling his time with, getting a better golf score. And for him, it was being more involved in his church and with his family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I assume you have steps that people go through to be successful at succession planning.
Yeah, there are 6 phases to succession.
So why don't we go through the 6 phases quickly?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's kind of preparation. It's putting your team together, and it's about assessing your company to determine whether or not you're ready for succession planning, because there are a lot of things that are required in succession planning that a lot of smaller companies don't even have, like performance management system. That's a great example. Then it's a matter of determining things like what is a key position versus a key person. And I've got a step-by-step process on figuring out what key positions there are. And this is more for a company of 50 employees plus versus 10 or 12, because
right.
It's pretty easy to figure out with a company of 10 to 12. It's about understanding what core competencies are required in the organization for leaders to be successful. It's about hiring. If you have to go externally, what is a really effective hiring process? Because you're going to be going out and filling key positions, and with a smaller company, those are so critical. And if you make a mistake, it's going to set you back in your succession planning timeline. Then it's developing your future leaders by assessing what gaps they have that fit that key position that you've identified you want them to rise to. And then it's about rewarding and recognizing those individuals that have succeeded. So those are the steps. And then there's sub steps within that, but that's the high level phases.
Let's take a step back and go to hiring. So how do you go about hiring the right person?
So there are 3 things. One is to include some sort of validated hiring assessment tool in the process to help take some of that bias out of your decision-making process. And it needs to be validated. So the way you find that out is if you're using an assessment, to call the company and ask them, because there's no website out there to to go to and say, okay, here are the validated assessments.
So
The
when you say
second,
validated assessment, what do you mean?
what it means is that the assessment has a high level of predictability that the job that you are interviewing for can show future success. So that's the validated part of it.
Now, do they validate based on technical skills, on activities that people are willing to do, or values, or a combination of the three?
The assessment I use is specifically around behaviors and not skill sets. But there are other assessments that will measure your technical knowledge. Whether it be Word or Excel or drywalling, whatever it is. And then the other really key item in hiring is to be able to have a hiring process that's repeatable and can successfully filter candidates using a behavioral interview system. And a behavioral interview system is one in which you are asking questions of the individual about their experiences in the past that relate to the position that you're hiring for. So it's not asking them a theoretical question. It's saying, tell me about a time where you had to deal with a difficult employee, and what did you do? What were the results? And what did you learn from it, or whatever. So those.
I love that question. By the way, it's a great question.
What did you learn from it?
No.
Oh, just
tell me about a time.
Yes.
I love the tell me about a time questions.
Yeah.
Because they're open-ended. They're going to tell me a story.
Right.
In my world, our hiring process really focuses on values. Company values.
Values are important.
And that tell me a time question is the sort of open-ended question that lets me figure out whether they're a values fit or they're not a values fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's also good for behavioral stuff, which we call will do.
Right.
It doesn't do anything for technical skills, but frankly, technical skills are teachable.
Right. Exactly. One of the things that I always said when I had a consulting company years ago, I always said hire for attitude, because you can't teach attitude.
Once in a blue moon, you can. I've been successful twice.
Okay.
And I've had several hundred.
I didn't have the energy to do that. So.
Well, I was lucky on both sides. And I've had a couple hundred people working for me over the years. So it's like, finding a blue whale or a blue cow or something like purple cow.
Right. Yeah. But the values, that is really important, Josh, because one of the things that I work with companies on when it comes to hiring is identifying those behaviors that support your values. What are those behaviors? And then those are the questions that you'll be asking a candidate. Are those questions that will uncover their values and determine whether or not they're going to fit with your culture.
Yeah. Beth, a lot of what you're talking about is what I call systemization of a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in my world, the reason I want to systemize a business is it gives me predictable behavior.
Exactly. Yep. And that's what my book does. It's very systemized, and it steps the reader through the process of developing a succession plan and then implementing the plan and revisiting the plan on an annual basis to refresh, just like you do with a business plan.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And the truth is, in my experience, unless a privately held business most of the time gets to a certain size, they always ignore the succession planning part.
Yes.
And when the owner gets to be somewhere between 50 and 75 years old, it bites them in the rear end because they're not prepared for what's coming down the road.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that makes sense. What do you think is the most important thing somebody should do to get prepared to have a successful succession in their business?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. Um, I I think it starts with the owner and having him or her get really clear about what, as I said, life looks like on the other side. And because the more that they get excited about that, the more energy they're going to have in developing a plan and driving the plan. If they're not fully committed to it, it's not going to happen. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's 12 employees or 100 employees. If that owner is not fully committed, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, the thing that several years ago, I used to think I could help people avoid seller's remorse, and the challenge, and the best you can do is help them manage it, in my opinion. Um, the thing that I find when people start looking on the other side, and the M&A people tell me this all the time,
Mm-hmm.
is that an owner will get to an LOI, and they look on the other side, they don't like what they see, and they stop the process dead.
Yeah.
And I've seen this happen several times myself over the years. Now, the truth is, if you're going to prepare somebody well, you have to prepare them for the negative things that happen, as well as the positive things that are going to
That's
happen,
true.
which is you're going to lose all your business contacts the day you sell your business and walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced this myself, so I know how it feels like.
Yeah.
I did it. And it's kind of a bad feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that looking out over the ledge of what's next is a really important thing.
Mm.
And experiencing it, and it can't be golf because you only can play golf so many days, or
Right. Exactly.
ski so many days, or ride your bicycle so many days.
Right.
You really need to find something that's going to make your heart sing and keep you very much involved. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a process.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
See, what I liked hearing with your story is you took your guy from working 60 hours a week down to 1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
That was a process. That didn't
Yes.
happen overnight.
No, it didn't. No. Yeah.
And he had a chance to check out and test all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things that will be next in their life, which there was a book just written. I can't think of the title of it, but it was a great metaphor, which is the second mountain.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you climb the first mountain, which is your business.
Mm-hmm.
And your second mountain is a passion project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
for this gentleman, he had a couple of them. One was his church, and and his grandkids, and those things made his heart sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So passion projects are really important when it comes to the called the second mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't remember the author, but it was a fun book. So it sounds like you have a good system, and I would encourage people to read your book. And Beth, we are unfortunately out of time. So where would they find the book and any?
Yeah, the book, you can go to my website, executive-velocity.com, or on Amazon, Replaceable, An Obsession with Succession. It was just released a couple weeks ago.
I see that.
Yeah.
So I thank you so much, Beth, for spending some time with us. And I have two things I'd like you to do.
Sure.
And the first, if you spend some time listening to this podcast, you know what's coming. Please go to where you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review. It's really important. If you love us, you can give us 5 stars. If you hate us, you can give us 1 star. I really hope you don't hate me, but that's okay if you do. And the second thing is like Beth, I have recently released my second book. It's called The Sale Ready Company. It's a continuation of our Aardvark family fable. And our leader, John Aardvark, is now getting ready to do the transition out of his business. And he has all sorts of things he has to deal with along the way. I mean, he did create a sustainable business, which was great for running it, but now there's a next step to take. And we go through all the steps and all the family things that go along with that. If you're in a family business or you're not in a family business, it's a really fun read. I've even had people who are not in business say, when's the third book coming out? We need to know what happens. So, at any rate, to find it's really easy. You just go to www.salereadycompany.com. I happen to be selling the book there for half price. I have a bunch of bonuses that go along with it. So I hope you go there and buy the book and let me know what you think. So this is Josh Patrick. We're with Beth Miller. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.